In the heart of Manila, there's an old hospital that has long been the subject of ghost stories and urban legends. Once a bustling medical center, it is now abandoned, left to decay in the humid air. The hospital is said to be haunted by the spirits of patients who never made it out, their restless souls trapped within its walls. Night shift workers from the nearby buildings often report hearing disembodied voices and seeing ghostly apparitions in the corridors, especially near the old operating rooms. The once sterile white walls are now yellowed with age, covered in mold and grime, and the air is thick with the scent of decay. It was late at night when a group of young adults, driven by curiosity and thrill-seeking, decided to explore the haunted hospital. Marco, the fearless leader, convinced his friends, Lisa, who was always up for an adventure, Anna, quiet and cautious one, Leo, who loved to document everything, and Paolo, the skeptic, to join him in the dare. They entered the hospital through a broken window, the only light coming from their flashlights and the faint moonlight filtering through the dirty, broken windows. "This place gives me the creeps," Anna whispered, gripping her flashlight tightly. "Come on, it's just an old building," Paolo scoffed. "Ghosts aren't real." "Then you won't mind going first?" Marco challenged with a grin. Paolo hesitated, but then shrugged. "Sure, why not?" As they ventured deeper into the hospital, the air grew colder, and an uneasy silence settled around them. The sound of their footsteps echoed through the empty halls, mingling with the occasional creak of the old building. They passed by rooms filled with rusted beds, broken medical equipment, and scattered papers. The smell of rotten mold was overpowering, making them gag. Leo took photos as they went, capturing the eerie atmosphere. "Did you hear that?" Liza suddenly asked, her voice barely above a whisper. They all stopped and listened. At first, there was nothing, but then faintly, they heard it. A soft, raspy breathing, coming from one of the nearby rooms. "Probably just the wind," Paolo said, though his voice had lost its usual confidence. "Wind doesn't breathe," Marco replied, his eyes narrowing as he peered into the darkness. The tension grew as they approached the room where the breathing seemed to be coming from. Marco pushed open the door with a loud creak, and they all shined their flashlights inside. The room was empty, save for an old hospital bed with rusty chains dangling from it. But the moment they stepped inside, the door slammed shut behind them, plunging the room into darkness. "Not funny, guys," Paolo said, his voice shaky. "That wasn't us," Lisa whispered, her eyes wide with fear. Suddenly, the bed in the center of the room began to shake violently, chains clattering against the metal frame. Sound of distant, pained moaning filled the room, growing louder and more agonized by the second. "Let's get out of here," Anna cried, panic rising in her voice. Desperation set in as they frantically tried to open the door, but it wouldn't budge. The moaning grew louder, more anguished, as if the very walls were crying out in pain. Leo dropped his camera in his haste, and the sound of it hitting the floor echoed eerily in the small space. Suddenly, the moaning stopped, placed by an oppressive silence that made their ears ring. Then, out of the darkness, a figure emerged. A pale, ghostly apparition of a nurse, her face twisted in torment, her hollow eyes staring directly at them. "Please, help me," the nurse whispered, her voice barely audible, as she reached out with trembling hands. "Get away from us," Marco shouted, backing away in terror. But the nurse only came closer, her movements slow and deliberate, as if she were floating rather than walking. Her presence filled the room with a cold so intense that their breath froze in the air. With no other choice, the group made a desperate dash for the window they had come in through. The nurse's ghostly wails followed them, echoing through the empty halls as they fled. Leo, lagging behind to retrieve his camera, was the last to jump out. Just as he was about to climb through the window, he felt an icy hand grip his shoulder, freezing him in place. Turned to see the nurse standing inches away from him, a cold breath chilling his skin. "Don't leave. Stay with us, forever," she whispered, voice filled with sorrow. Leo let out a terrified scream as he yanked free and dove through the window, crashing to the ground outside. The others pulled him up, and they all ran without looking back, the nurse's mournful cries fading into the night as they escaped the haunted hospital.